It is now my pleasure to introduce Bob Watt from Boeing. Before Bob introduces our speaker, he will add a higher number to our Rotary Centennial Wheel. 56% of our members, of our goal, has been reached. Thank you for your support and realizing that the gifts you make are changing lives. Get this for you, Bob. As you know, Bob is a man of many talents. His expertise continues to be tapped. As a trustee of our Seattle Rotary Service Foundation, Bob was a significant contributor into the development of the campaign structure. So thank you, Bob, for all you do.
When Nancy asked me to do that, I, of course, with great pride, having been the CEO of Family Services myself a decade ago, said, "Sure, what's the job description?" She said, "Tall." I said, "Okay, I can handle that." It is a distinct honor for someone from Boeing to be able to introduce the Chairman, President, and Chief Executive Officer of one of the world's finest airlines, Bill Ayer. Bill flew soloed before he got his driver's license, is a multi-generation pilot, and continues that license to this day through his nonprofit charitable activities in support of Angel Flight America, where he personally flies patients and their families to get their medical treatments. So flying is in this man's blood. At Alaska Airlines, he leads the 9th largest airline in the United States of America with 10,000 employees, 58 destinations so far, and more than 110 aircraft. Also so far, we hope, Bill. He's spent 25 years of his life in aviation, starting with a very small airline, Air Olympia, which he founded and served as its president. Then with 13 years at Horizon, moving up through a variety of marketing and operations positions, where finally he served as Senior Vice President of Operations, meaning 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. He had to be sure that everything was right, exactly right, all the time. He joined Alaska in 1995 as Vice President of Marketing and Planning. Since then, he's held the posts of Senior Vice President of Customer Service, Marketing and Planning, President and Chief Operating Officer. In 2002, he became the carrier's Chief Executive Officer, and in May 2003, he was appointed Chairman. He's a graduate of Stanford and the University of Washington. Stanford granted a bachelor's degree in economics. Now, those of you that know the airline business would wonder why a guy with a bachelor's degree in economics would be in airlines. However, if you've looked at how well Alaska has done, you know that it's really mattered. He also has an MBA from the University of Washington. He does indeed continue to hold not just private pilot's licenses, but a flight instructor pilot certificate with instrument and multi-engine ratings. You will see shortly that this is a wise and caring leader who, along with his wife and son, find many different ways to help in the community, including the very personal way he reaches connecting families to urgent medical needs. Please welcome to this podium, Bill Ayer.
Well, thank you, Robert, and good afternoon, everybody. First of all, on behalf of all of us at Alaska and Horizon, I want to add our happy birthday wishes to Harvey. That is just terrific. And speaking of birthdays, some of you may know that at Alaska Airlines, we are about to celebrate our 75th birthday next year in 2007. And our sister carrier, Horizon, is in the midst of celebrating its 25th anniversary this year. And along with that goes a certain amount of historical reminiscing, as I'm sure you can imagine. So just to share a quick piece of Alaska Airlines history, our first scheduled service to Seattle actually dates back to 1951, when we were awarded a route that connected Seattle, Fairbanks, and Anchorage. And it really was just a small crumb from the table of the of the mighty Civil Aeronautics Board, which in those days gave all the route awards to carriers. But it was a crumb that we gratefully accepted, and really was a welcome expansion to our service, existing service in the state of Alaska, and it was the start of something big for us. Of course, service dating back to 1951 is nothing for this group, whose service to this community spans nearly 100 years. And you are all such an incredible force for good and for progress, not only in our region, but through the life-changing programs that you and other Rotary clubs support around the world. And it's truly an honor to speak with you here today. Well, the airline industry has been through multiple cycles over the years, with cumulative losses exceeding the cumulative profits. It's been a survival of the fittest business, and the downturn since 2000 has been the deepest and most difficult in history, with an ever-increasing array of taxes and fees, fuel costs more than doubling, and the challenge now of footing much of the bill for new security measures post 9/11. And it's no mystery that some of the most respected brands in the sky have ended up in bankruptcy. I think nearly everyone agrees that the industry is in need of repair. Losses have continued despite the fact that airlines are experiencing some of the highest load factors in history, with more people than ever taking to the skies. And while the picture seems to be brightening a little bit this year, U.S. airline losses since 2000 total a staggering $40 billion, and still counting. Now, as we at Alaska Airlines look toward our 75th year in operation, we find ourselves one of only two major airlines that made money last year. And we're one of only two legacy airlines, carriers before deregulation, that have avoided bankruptcy. The other airline, American, just barely averted bankruptcy, and while once highly regarded carriers like Pan Am, TWA, and Eastern are long gone. Our problems as an industry are clearly more structural than cyclical. Low-cost competition and price transparency via the internet have forced fares down about 65% from where they were 25 years ago, and that's on an inflation-adjusted basis. And Alaska certainly hasn't been immune to the industry's problems. We, too, have been grappling with rising fuel prices, aggressive competition, some of it now aided by the bankruptcy courts, and ever-increasing government-mandated taxes and fees. Yet Alaska hasn't been among the carriers calling on either the bankruptcy courts or the federal government to fix what ails us. In the wake of 9/11, we were determined to make the tough decisions necessary to survive while maintaining our employee and customer loyalty, and then returning to profitability and beginning to grow. We've significantly reduced our costs while working to minimize the impacts on our employees. We've continued to offer profit sharing and pension benefits while providing generous severance packages to those employees whose jobs have been affected. We've also benefited our customers by offering low fares, an easy-to-use website, a simpler check-in process at the airport, and a valuable frequent flyer program. Of course, we're not the only carrier that's worked hard and made tough decisions to transform in the face of these unprecedented challenges. But unfortunately, that hasn't been enough for many of our competitors. And with so many carriers operating under bankruptcy protection, sometimes for years at a time, it's not surprising that we now have concerns about an uneven playing field. As you're probably well aware, nearly half of the U.S. major carriers today or recently have been in bankruptcy. Since 1979, at least one airline per year has filed for bankruptcy. And while the opportunity to restructure is available to every industry in the United States, the airline industry does seem to be the government's best customer. Chapter 11 is seen as a safe harbor from creditors, as well as a way to restructure and retool business plans, renegotiate leases, modify labor contracts, and abandon pension plans. Allowed to go on indefinitely, however, it can become anti-competitive by keeping airlines going and going and going with unfair cost advantages and debt protections, and thereby really hampering an industry recovery by preventing and delaying desperately needed capacity reductions across the industry. Several bankrupt or recently bankrupt carriers are now beginning to grow significantly and make competitive inroads into new markets. And they still don't appear, in some cases, to have viable long-term business models. Under these conditions, bankruptcy can become a form of selective treatment under the law based on an airline's failed financial performance. Alaska Airlines, I think, is proof that an airline can survive, maintain promises to its employees and its customers, and grow without being the beneficiary of major government-granted competitive breaks. The new bankruptcy laws that took effect late last year, which make it harder for companies to remain under bankruptcy protection for an extended period, I think are a step in the right direction, a step closer to a truly free market for the airline industry. In the meantime, it's been no cakewalk, and maybe a few hairs missing from the top of this head can be blamed on it. But at the end of the day, we know the success of our business still boils down to winning customers over, one passenger at a time, one flight at a time, one community at a time. And customer service and community service run deep in Alaska's veins from our earliest days as a lifeline in rural Alaska. It's what we built our business and our brand around, and we recognize that our people and the service they provide are the only things that truly give us a competitive advantage. Let me give you just a quick snapshot of what our service to this region looks like today. Alaska and Horizon combined serve 8 cities within the state of Washington with 320 daily departures. We connect Seattle to 88 destinations in the United States, Mexico, and Canada. And every year, our 6,900 Washington-based employees serve more than 7.7 million passengers in the state. And Alaska and Horizon together account for just over half of all scheduled service out of SeaTac. Now, time for a little customer research, a little audience participation maybe. How about a show of hands? How many folks in this room are frequent flyers, members of our mileage plan? Wow. My goodness. Well, thank you for your loyalty. It's a competitive world out there, and we are very appreciative for your business, believe me. You join more than 600,000 Alaska Mileage Plan members in the greater Seattle area and nearly 1.2 million members throughout the state. And again, we very much appreciate your business. With our corporate headquarters in Seattle and our largest customer base here, we feel a special responsibility to this region. And 2 of the core values that we build our business around are what we call Alaska Spirit and Caring. And believe me, these are not hollow slogans that are posted on a dusty plaque in our boardroom. We believe our spirit of caring sets us apart in the industry and underscores our commitment to service and to investing in the communities where we operate. And the feeling of caring and commitment is the soul of Alaska Airlines, and our people truly live it every day by going the extra mile, not only for our customers, but for our communities and for each other. A full third of our corporate giving focuses on worthy organizations in the state of Washington and covers a range of areas from medical research, treatment and transport, social and community services, and civic activities to sports, the arts, education, and environmental causes. And it's a commitment that has been led by our employees and wholeheartedly supported and embraced by our board of directors. And really, no matter the ups and downs of the industry or our financial situation, we've tried to be real steady with our approach here. Now, let me share with you a strategy that we started talking about several years ago and that we call the Alaska 2010 Plan. And it's the concept that employees, customers, and investors create a virtuous cycle. And it all starts with employees. If we hire the best people and work together to do an excellent job of serving our customers, that should bring a healthy return for our investors and new capital for growth, which in turn will lead to financial stability and an even better place to work for our employees. Now, it's a pretty simple business philosophy. It's all centered on employees working together to understand what customers care about and then to provide it. The right product at the right price, creating a strong brand preference in the marketplace. So beyond this plan, which has allowed us to return to financial health and pursue growth, what else do we need here in Seattle to help us continue following this path? We need to have an affordable airport to fly out of with the capacity to meet this region's needs now and into the future. Many of you are aware of the highly public battle last year to ensure that that airport continues to be SeaTac. And in the end, despite our out-of-town competitors' best efforts to move to Boeing Field, we think the local community here was the real winner. And public planning, tax dollars, and infrastructure will continue to be focused on one airport, not 2, and all carriers will pay their fair share of the cost of that facility. But we do need to keep those costs in check so we can continue to offer competitive fares to this region. I think the cloud that built up during the Boeing Field debate did have a silver lining. It reminded the Port of Seattle and the carriers alike what our customers really need from an airport facility and what they don't. And during the mid to late 90s, a period that I think airlines fondly look back on as one of the few heydays for our industry, it seemed that public demand was for more monumental airports with some lavish amenities. And as airport capital projects multiplied, so did the facility and landing fees the carriers were charged to fund those projects. And no one griped very much because it appeared that travelers were willing to pay the higher fares to construct and support these facilities. Well, then 9/11 hit and turned our country and air travel literally upside down. In the new environment in which we find ourselves, the greatest need now is to fund appropriate security measures. And what our customers are increasingly telling us is they want affordable fares and pleasant, convenient airport facilities, but certainly not Taj Mahals. And while Alaska would have moved part of our operation to Boeing Field if we'd had to, I'm really glad that we'll be concentrating our efforts at SeaTac. And the Port of Seattle certainly seems to be moving in the right direction to keep costs in check while ensuring this region has the airport capacity it needs to support travel demand and economic growth over the long term. We're also paying close attention to a debate further afield in Washington, D.C., but one that has big implications for air travelers across the nation, and that's the issue of equitable tax treatment. This is especially crucial at a time when this industry may actually be at the start of a recovery from the toughest period in its history. Since 1972, taxes and fees on the average airline ticket have tripled. And I would pose the following question to this group. Do you think it's a sin to fly? Now, why do I ask a question like that? Because at 26% of a $200 airline ticket, the taxes and fees associated with flying exceed even the so-called sin taxes applied to cigarettes and alcohol. For example, the tax on a pack of cigarettes is 18%. It's about 11% on a bottle of rum. And looking at other forms of transportation, we pay about 12% in taxes on a gallon of gas for our cars, and there are no federal taxes applied to bus or rail tickets. There are literally 6 or 8 discrete taxes and fees that are put on top of the base fare of a ticket. And one of the most recent fees is for airport security. Now, in our view, airport security is national security and should be funded as such. Airlines shouldn't have to pick up the ever-increasing tab for new security mandates, and yet the federal government is telling us the well is dry and ultimately airlines and their customers must foot an even bigger bill. Another area that impacts the amount of taxes and fees paid by the traveling public is the cost for funding our air traffic control system. Currently, the revenues to support that system are generated by some of the taxes and fees I just mentioned, plus cargo and fuel taxes. And with this funding up for reauthorization by Congress next year, we must ensure that all users of the system pay their fair share. Now, currently, the airlines and their customers, through these taxes and fees, pay a far larger portion of air traffic control services than they actually consume. This is because the current funding system was devised in the late 1960s at a time when there were 2 business aircraft for every 10 commercial aircraft. Today, there are about 20 business airplanes for every 10 commercial airplanes. What this means is the airlines, which currently constitute about 60% of FAA-controlled flights, pay more than 90% of the bill. And in return, airlines too often face unnecessary delays or consume extra fuel, crew time, and other resources due to an air traffic control system that really is behind the times. Meanwhile, non-airline users of the system consume more and more system capacity that they aren't paying for. Our current air traffic control system is severely constrained. It uses ground-based navigation equipment dating back to the 1950s and doesn't allow airlines to fully utilize their new state-of-the-art technology in the cockpit. Likewise, the current system is too human-dependent and has too many maintenance requirements. Given the obvious need for expansion and modernization of the system to accommodate increasing demand, the airline industry is strongly advocating for a more equitable funding solution that ensures that all users, the airlines, business aviation, and general aviation, pay at a level appropriate to their use of the system. One final aspect of our business that we're continually looking at, especially as Seattle's hometown carrier, is extending our service to meet the growing needs of this region. In the last 5 years, Alaska has added nonstop service from Seattle to Boston, New York City, Washington, D.C., Orlando, Miami, Chicago, Dallas, and Denver. And Horizon has added nonstops to Santa Barbara and Kamloops, British Columbia. In March of next year, Horizon will introduce new nonstop service to the California wine country with flights between Seattle and Santa Rosa in Sonoma County. The two carriers have also been working together on something that we call harmonization, and it's a scheduling philosophy where our respective planning departments work together to schedule the right size aircraft, whether that's from the Alaska fleet or from the Horizon fleet, schedule the right airplane at the right time so our customers get the most flights at the most convenient times possible. And of course, as we grow, we've been buying airplanes from our longtime and highly valued partner, Boeing. We have an order for up to 100 of their airplanes through 2011 and believe very strongly in the ability of Boeing's next generation 737s to take us where we need to go. In fact, by the end of 2008, Alaska will have an all 737 fleet and one of the most fuel efficient and youngest fleets in the industry with an average age of about 8 years. Yeah. Thank you. Who would have thought that in the 55 years since Alaska started scheduled service to this area that Seattle would develop into an international center for trade and technology, aerospace, biomedical research, and philanthropy. And the opportunities ahead and the contributions this community can make are truly limitless. And let me tell you that both Alaska Airlines and Horizon Air are absolutely committed to ongoing support for this region, both as air carriers and as corporate citizens. Well, thank you again for inviting me to speak with you today. I hope you'll join us in the celebration of our 75th anniversary next year. We have a number of activities planned in Seattle, and we'll certainly be sharing more on that in the coming months. And before I maybe take some questions here, I do have a brief announcement, and that is that in support of the Rotary Centennial Project, supporting family services, Alaska will donate an MVP Gold Card to any Rotary member who donates $10,000 or more to the Centennial Project by the end of this year. Thank you. Questions?
Bill, thanks for your thoughtful comments today. Two quick questions. One, can you talk just briefly about your hedge strategy and how that benefited you in the recent past with respect to pricing on fuel and where that's going? And then secondly, you mentioned the Boeing Field Initiative. When will Everett come into play for you as a commercial destination?
With respect to hedging, I think it's important to understand that philosophically what we're trying to do with hedging is not market time. We're trying to reduce volatility in the price of fuel. It's a huge percentage of our total costs, and getting certainty about that, I think, is a really worthwhile objective. It's been important. We started hedging, and of course, oil prices ran up, and so we had quite a gain, effective gain from that hedging activity, something on the order of $100 million of savings last year, and it could be about that much this year, depending on where oil goes. So it's something we're going to continue to do, but oil will come down, and we'll have hedges at higher amounts, too. So it really is to take out the volatility and not the time to market. And I think it's important that people understand that's our view of it. With respect to Payne Field up in Everett, that's something that would be more probably appropriate for Horizon to look at. And in fact, I think they have taken some, at least preliminary looks at that market over the years. And certainly as the region grows to the north, there may be an opportunity there.
Thank you. We have a question here.
Bill, you talked about taxes and fees. What percentage of those do you pass on to the airline customer?
You know, the one thing I did learn in economics is that there's a demand curve for everything. And as you pass things along, or try to pass things along, there is an effect on demand. So in a strong economy, you can probably pass along a fair bit of it. In a weaker economy or a highly competitive environment, more competitive, more lower cost carriers or whatever, you can pass along less. It's all about the bottom line ticket price and how does that relate to demand and somebody's desire to take a trip somewhere. So, you know, we talk to Congress about this sometimes, and they're kind of quick to say, well, just pass it along. And we say there's a limit to what we can pass along because there is a demand curve.
I am a height-challenged American, African-American. Oh, you can hold the mic. And the coach seats usually have me sitting with my chin on my knees, and the first class seats are priced for 4 people to fly for the price of 1. So how do we get more room in coach and lower prices first class?
Yeah. Well, on the more room in coach, I think you will find that we have a little bit more room than our average competitor, and that's something we try to pay a lot of attention to. That, of course, is balanced by how many seats can we put on the airplane, which gets to the revenue earning potential of the airplane. So there's a balance there. And with respect to first class, we have lowered our first class fares, and we're actually selling more because we've lowered the fare. But also, it's a very important. First class is used for a lot of upgrades, as I'm sure many of the Gold members know, and that's a very important part of our mileage plan.
I find that frequently when I travel, I have a choice between you and Southwest, primarily based on price. Would you comment on the competition between you and that specific carrier, Southwest?
Yeah. Southwest is a terrific airline. They're the only airline that has been profitable every year of their existence, and they have a tremendous understanding of the business in terms of what the leverage points are to achieve profitability. They have, I think, an excellent employee culture, and they've been able to, weather a lot of situations that the rest of the industry hasn't done very well with, and they've come through it with flying colors. So we admire Southwest a great deal. We hear from customers about some service differences, and the boarding is one of the things. We have really worked hard to put ourselves in the role of a customer and kind of work through the whole process from buying a ticket on the internet to checking in either at the airport on a kiosk or on the internet. And what does that look like? How do you get from your automobile seat to the airplane seat? And so we hear about the boarding process being different, maybe a point of preference for Alaska. But bottom line is we have a huge amount of respect for Southwest. They're a great company, and they're a bunch of great people.
Bill, a compliment on your internet site. It's great. But my question to you is, would you like to amplify just a bit about your involvement with Angel Flight and what it involves? I think the members might be interested.
Well, Angel Flight is a tremendous organization, and I've had the pleasure of not only being a pilot but also being on the board for a bit here. And what it is, it's a national organization, and actually some regions, and Angel Flight West is the one out here. And it's a group of private pilots who donate their airplanes and their time to fly patients that need to travel for medical treatment. And at Alaska, we participate with hundreds of tickets a year from the state of Alaska down to Seattle, down to the lower 48, because that's pretty impractical for small general aviation airplanes to make that trip. My typical mission has been eastern Washington, Montana, Idaho, and it's often people that have cancer that need frequent treatment here at one of the hospitals in Seattle. And I get a tremendous amount of joy out of helping people, and I get to fly my airplane at the same time. It's a win-win deal. But it's a great organization, and we are growing. We've got 6,000 some pilots across the country, and it's a real fun activity for me, and it makes me feel good about what I'm doing there.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you to all of today's participants, which brings us to President Bill's pretty good rule for this week. Respect your elders. If things work out really, really well, you will eventually be old yourself. We are adjourned.
Seattle Rotary Online is made possible in part by a grant from First Choice Health, now providing return-to-work services that help get absent employees back to their jobs. Healthy employees produce healthy companies at First Choice Health. And by Enterprise Seattle. For over 35 years, Enterprise Seattle has provided client-based economic development services to businesses throughout King County and its 39 cities. More information on Enterprise Seattle and how they help businesses grow and prosper can be found at www.enterpriseseattle.org.